Welcome back. This is the Northwest Tankline Super Bowl show. We're coming to you from New Orleans, and this is the big game this weekend featuring the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. Our next guest, well, he knows a little bit about the Super Bowl. He was the general manager of the Atlanta Falcons when they made it to the big game against the New England Patriots. Currently works for Sumer Sports, an analytical company looking at discovering the winning edge with data-driven insights. He is Thomas Dimitroff. Thomas, welcome.
Good to be here. And you just passed me along a nice cigar here. Does everyone know that, or are you not supposed to talk about that?
No, we're known for that, right?
Yeah.
Canadian hospitality.
Canadian hospitality.
Right?
It's always good.
You know about that. You grew up in Canada.
I do. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, look, I'm a huge believer, and one day you just need to promote me to be the guy that's going to help bring a team to Canada, given my background. Yes, I'm American, but having been in this league for many years, the fact that Canada doesn't have a team right now is always concerning. You might not be saying that because you don't want it to affect the CFL, but I do believe it. I believe that it's going to be interesting to see.
Really?
Yeah. Do
you think the CFL could survive or in the same market with an NFL team?
I do. I mean, you're not going to have them across the – you're saying if it was in Vancouver, if it were to be in Toronto.
Yeah. Well, where would you – if you're talking about putting the NFL in Canada, where would you put it?
You don't want me to – I mean, I think Toronto's an ideal place.
Okay.
I think it's close, right?
Yeah.
It's close to Buffalo. I think that would be something that would be of interest, I think, personally. The idea of putting the CFL out, I guess I've never really thought about that. I think it can survive, personally.
Okay. All right.
Help me with this.
Okay.
What is the average crowd right now? Does it vary from city to city?
Say 20 to 25, and it varies.
20 to 25.
Yeah.
Okay. And are all the stadiums redone now where they're housing that instead of these huge edifices and there shouldn't be?
Commonwealth in Edmonton is still probably the biggest one that, as you mentioned, is a huge edifice. BC is pretty big. But, you got smaller, I wouldn't say smaller, brand new stadiums in Hamilton, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, and those are, probably in the 35 range, right? So It's not like they're 55, 60, although they can expand for a Grey Cup. But that's what CFL is looking at, is trying to get those type of stadium ranges in that 30 to 35 range.
That idea, and I know I'm not interviewing you, I'm fascinated by what the Canadian, base feels about that, because you're so protective of the CFL. I get that.
Yeah.
And there's some wonderful players and wonderful people who are still involved and always involved. I didn't look at it that way as much as I just thought the country itself is just such a thriving country in so many ways, and they're so football driven, they're hockey driven, of course. That's where I keep thinking that there has to be some sort of a market somewhere. But maybe you go where there's not a team. You're going to go to New Brunswick or Newfoundland? How do you guys say that? I don't even know what it's called.
Newfoundland. There you go. Hey, you got a Guelph University education. You got to figure these things out, man. Come on. Sumer Sports, tell us again about Sumer Analytical. And I know talking to you last year, it's basically looking at teams and trying to correlate between salary and production and finding value for teams at certain salary point levels.
So at the very core, what it is we are a subjective, so eyes of the scouts, combination of with objective, all the advanced data analytics. So what we do is we've hired over 600 years of experience in the NFL. We have over 5 general managers working for us, as well as 20 basically other NFL scouts and player personnel directors who create, they watch the video, they attach numbers to 25 to 30 metrics on each position. They write the report up, and those reports and those subjective reports of over 3,000 reports every year are the foundation of our algorithms and the models that are, I call them our propeller heads, right? All of those really, really smart guys, and I love them all. They take all of that information along with all the other data out there, right? There's so much data out there available, and I'm making it simple, of course, but they put it all together and they create these great models that we sell back ultimately to the NFL teams. Our B2B business is NFL, as well as the NCAA with the portal and the NIL. This is a big deal now, right? A lot of these NCAA programs, and I'm quite honestly, I've reached out to a number of people in Canada. I've reached out to the league. I've also reached out to the University of Guelph and beyond. I would like even our nemesis, the Western Mustangs, I would welcome, because there's so much that we can do on the collegiate data side as well. That's what we're working on now.
Sounds like you're at the tip of the iceberg.
I believe there can be. We're backed, I told you before, by a guy named Paul Tudor Jones. Paul Tudor Jones, macro trader extraordinaire. If you look him up online, watch the documentaries on him. Driven guy. He came up and he has a lot of money invested in this. When you have a guy like that who's been massively successful in the business, he's not just throwing money around on something that's not going to be real. We're growing. We're 3 years in, and we have a lot of growth.
We are speaking with Thomas Dimitroff, former Falcons general manager, now with Sumer Sports. And again, we're talking about analytics and football. You know, it's interesting when you talk about your company, though, there seems to be a balance, because I think for anything you need balance when you're trying to analyze a situation. So not only do you have the statistical data that you look at, but as you mentioned, you have eyes and plenty of NFL experience looking at the talent. And, you know, the other thing, too, that I thought was very interesting, you talked about the NCAA and NIL. I mean, it's not like the old days where you recruited a kid, hey, you've got him for 4 years, and here we go. I mean, now you basically have to have a book or a read on every player in the country who's eligible to enter a portal, right? And what his value could be in terms of NIL. So, I mean, you're seeing schools do it. They're hiring general managers and personnel directors for college programs.
But they're still, yes, they are, and they have to. And this used to be, it doesn't really matter what the number was, but it was a couple $100,000 jobs, which is great for most of the world. And yet now all these former general managers, these big-time schools and programs are looking to hire former general managers, give them a big-ticket number, and have them revamped their football operations department within the NCAA, which is very different than what it was. Most of these ADs, who are very smart, have no idea how to put together an NFL style or NFL centric department, and I think that you're going to see a lot more of that. That NIL stuff is unbelievable where it's going, right, at so many levels. And what we try to do is, we know that the programs, these NCAA programs, don't have the ability to hire 40 scouts, right? What we're doing now, we're hiring another 14 scouts within our company. We'll get off the Sumer for a minute, but it's important. What we're trying to do is provide all kinds of portal background and work so that we can sell that again to the NCAA teams, where they're like, okay, we can't manage this ourselves. Let's go to Sumer. Let's get their evaluations. Let's get their projections on what should be, spent on these guys' NIL. It's not going to be exact, but it gives them some foundation that we think we can help them. Versus, remember, some of these programs, they have 5 or 6 scouts down the hallway who are graduate assistants they've never evaluated in their lives.
I'm going to tell you a story. There's a goaltender that plays for the Vancouver Canucks right now. His name's Kevin Lankinen, and we have an analyst back in Vancouver named Kevin Woodley. He's a goalie guru. And Kevin, during the summer, was a big proponent of, hey, somebody got to sign this guy. He's got great analytics, and, he somehow got the data from this. And I can't remember the name of the company. But then I asked Kevin, I said, so why didn't other teams, if you knew this, why didn't other teams? He goes, because some teams are just cheap and they didn't want to pay for the info, right? I mean, do you see that in your line of work as well, that you see some teams that could be getting a tremendous advantage with Sumer or another analytical company, whatever,
sure,
and they just, no, we're not going to do it because they don't want to spend money in that department?
I think what's happening, interestingly enough, is the GM and the head coach, they're there and they want to be mindful of what they're spending. The ticket, quite honestly, is going to the president of the organization, and the parallel of that is the AD. If the president signs off in an organization, there's not the pressure on the GM to say, my owner or my president is going to come to me and say, you want another $150,000 or $250,000 to purchase this? Well, that means you're going to have to truncate your scouting staff and take 2 of those guys off. No one wants to do that. But when the head guy comes and says, hey, look, we have the money, don't worry about it, he's in. So you're right. They want to be mindful. The GMs and the ADs want to be mindful of being frugal enough, because they never want it to be held over their heads to say, wait a minute, we hired you to do all that. Why are you hiring Sumer to take care of some of your scouting elements? That's a big deal.
Where do you think the industry is in 5 years from now?
I think the industry realizes the use and the criminally underutilized use of data as an augmentation, not as a black box. And I keep saying that, and I can't stress it enough. The more people I talk to in scouting, the more people I talk to, head coaches. You may or may not know that I interviewed with the Jets and Tennessee this year, and the conversations around that and the conversations I had with the sort of rising potential head coaches, because that's what you do when you're interviewing. You make calls to all these guys, Liam Cohen, whoever it is, and you talk to them and you find out a lot of the younger guys, those 35s to mid-40s maybe, 100% understand the utilization of data. Game time decision making, that's a big thing. They just, I think in the next 5 years, are going to realize more and more it's about roster optimization as well. And it's not just on the game time decisions and the fourth downs and et cetera, that how are we going to place the value on these guys. And it's going to help their team ultimately.
Thomas Dimitroff is our guest. You mentioned it, Thomas. We talked about where the industry is going to be in 5 years. You talked about interviewing for jobs, general managers' jobs in the NFL. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Still see yourself with Sumer, or do you see yourself back in the game as a GM somewhere?
Look, I love Sumer. I love working with Sumer, of course, and we're doing some cutting-edge stuff that I think is going to be affecting what's going to happen in the next 5 years. That said, I had an opportunity, and I appreciate the opportunity. Every day of my life, I think about evaluating players and building football teams, whether that is with Sumer, because I deal with it. Every day I'm watching vids, and we're just looking at it from a different perspective, widening my aperture. The opportunity to interview this year was really good for me. It's been 3 years since I've dug into that. I have not put my foot back in until this year. I'm on with an agent called Trace Armstrong, great agent. You remember him. He played football. He's a great guy. He knows what he's doing. So I think the big thing is just seeing it has to be the right situation, right? I would never leave Sumer and what I'm doing here with Paul Tudor Jones just for the sake of any situation.
You have been part of this big game. Of course, we're not going to get into it for obvious reasons because I know it probably still stings. But here's the thing that I look at this week, and I'm sure you'll kind of echo these sentiments and even give us some insight. To me, this isn't just about the players on the field this week. This is an organizational test. And what I mean by that is this is your entire organization needing to be on point, whether it's arranging travel arrangements for your players' families, getting them tickets, making sure that your workout facilities this week are as close as they can be to what you have at your facilities, your meetings, all of that. You're trying to make this week, believe it or not, as normal as possible for your team and just allow them to focus on the game. And to do that, this goes way beyond, to me, the coaches and the general managers. This is an organizational test.
It is, and some of the ones that know how to deal with it, and they're not thrown around or off balance because of all these things you're talking about. I mean, New England did it forever because they were just used to doing it, right? I think the Chiefs are in that same situation. I sometimes think the Chiefs, I mean, every time you turn on a game, there's something there, Bundalaruski stuff going on with insurance, and I'm like, they're used to being thrown around by all these distractions. So I think they have a really good grasp of that. It's the first-time group, and I think Philly does too, right? Yeah. These two teams are stout in a lot of levels. It's important. When you see the teams that come in there just kind of on their heels and they're just mesmerized by the opportunity, I worry about those teams sometimes. Not saying they can't win. We got in there. I thought we handled it well in Atlanta back. You didn't want to bring this up back in 16, 17 when we lost, a historic loss. You know, there were elements to that in the end, right? You could tell the veteran team on the field and the non-veteran team. I'm talking about Bill Belichick against us, at Atlanta. He came out in that second half, which is another part of it, right? And made sure that the players were rested in a certain way. And we had spent ourselves, unfortunately, during that time. I loved what we did, but we lost in the end. And I think Belichick and the experience came through at so many levels, like you said, from an organization standpoint. So I agree with you.
You look at Mahomes and the greatness that is Patrick Mahomes. And when I look at this game, I always say to myself, Philly checks the boxes, but Kansas City has Mahomes.
Yeah. I mean, look, we have our own AI brain, right? We have a Sumer brain, and Sumer brain says Philly, out of all the data and everything, is statistically superior, but we know the Mahomes factor is not factored in there, right? And that cat is just, and they've been up and down this year. Even I love their defense. Don't get me wrong, but even elements of that team offensively, it's pretty amazing how he pulls it off.
Before we let you go, I know you love your Canadian football. Your buddy Mike O'Shea, who you made a lot of waves with last year, saying he should be coaching in the NFL. O'Shea's gone in his Winnipeg Blue Bombers 5 straight Grey Cups. Can the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid get to 5 straight Super Bowls? They're 3 now.
I think they can. But, Yeah, you just had me off there talking about Mike O'Shea, so I don't want to get into that. But
I'll get into it if you want.
No, I every time I see him, I'm like, I think he's done great things, and I think sometimes people move to another venture. And did Winnipeg, or you're just saying in Canada, I made waves because I was talking.
Oh, no, you made waves in Canada last year when you talked about O'Shea being
to me, I mean, it doesn't. I won't even say that this year. I think he's one of the best coaches out there, and I think that cat can go anywhere and be really special at what he does. And I know he's done great things there.
All right, and we've got Buck Pierce now in BC.
Buck Pierce, love
Mike
him.
O'Shea disciple, so there you go.
Good luck with you guys there.
Well, Thomas, thanks for stopping by. Good luck with Sumer, and who knows, maybe next time we talk to you, you are an NFL GM again.
See you guys.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks again.